So it's the year 1968, and already Boston GM Milt Schmidt has caused a bit of a stir on draft day by, at the 11th hour, releasing Ed Westfall to the draft, protecting Derek Sanderson instead, and as a result, forcing the other five GMs in the NHL to sort of reconfigure their priorities list going forward. Because, of course, Sanderson would have been very hotly sought after. The Boston Bruins knew that. They figure that as much as they value a guy like Eddie Westfall, they are more likely to be able to acquire him maybe later in the draft, although Westfall probably won't last too long in this draft either. He's quite a valuable defense, offense, a two-way forward. Good asset is Westfall. As you can see here, I have a spinning wheel. I have to be careful not to touch it until I'm ready. And also to quickly go over here, who has been protected so far for the Boston Bruins. Here you have Jerry Cheevers, Bobby Orr, Ted Green, John Busick, Phil Esposito, Ken Hodge, and Derek Sanderson. The Chicago Blackhawks have protected Dennis DeJordy, and if that isn't how his name is said, it is said according to some American commentary. I went actually and looked up how to pronounce several of these names. Again, these guys are a little before my time, so I've read about some of them more than I've necessarily seen or heard them. Pat Stapleton, Gilles Marat, Pierre Pilote, Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, and Ken Mora. Those are Chicago's 7 protected players. Detroit has protected Roger Crozier, Gary Bergman, Howie Young, Bart Crashley, Frank Mahovlich, Alex Delvecchio, and Gordie Howe. Montreal has protected Rogie Vachon, Jacques Leperrier, Ted Harris, Serge Savard, Jacques Lemaire, Jean Beliveau, and Yvon Cornwallis. For New York, it's Eddie Jackman, Jim Nelson, Harry Howell, Rod Sealing, Vic Hadfield, Jean Rattel, and Rod Gilbert. And for Toronto, they have protected Johnny Bower, Tim Horton, Alan Stanley, Paul Henderson, Norm Ullman, Ron Ellis, and Dave Keon. So those are the protected 7 for the respective teams. And they are going to draft 14 players, although today I'm going to do either a 3 or a 5-round draft. And full disclosure, I didn't think I was going to do this, but then once I started doing it, I realized it would probably be necessary. I did a 5-round practice draft this afternoon. I will not release the results of that draft. It does not count towards the teams, their standings, and everything like that. I feel like I'm hardly keeping any secrets. One thing that I will keep secret here, just a little off camera, is some additional preparation that I have for some of the teams. I don't want to give it all away entirely, but I have a general idea going into this. But with that being said, with all of the ideas that I have, I can't just do a recreation of this afternoon's 5-rounder because the teams could come up differently here on this wheel. So really a lot is going to be left up to the wheel, since also some of these teams will be going after, gunning for some of the same players. So I guess without further ado, let's see who we actually get first overall and what I have been calling this NHL redraft here for 1968. I guess as well I might as well take the elastics off here, take the reins off, get the players ready, and then away we go with it. So with the, let's see here, the first overall, hopefully I'll do this right, and if I don't, I won't upload it. But with the first overall pick, it looks like it is going to be the Boston Bruins, so they had nothing to fear. They would have acquired Derek Sanderson anyway. There you can see Boston is up with the next pick. Now, they had Westfall. I do have a list of priorities for Boston. Their list of priorities includes defensive defensemen, young left wings, and also veteran right wings to go in and play with Ken Hodge. Maybe so a little younger on the left side, veteran on the right side. Backup goaltender to help out Cheevers, and also Chicago players. I'll get into that a little. It came together in my head, this sort of feud between Tommy Ivan and Milt Schmidt because of Milt Schmidt's sort of fleecing there in 67 thereabouts or earlier in 68 rather. Really, really current to this, Boston and Chicago. So a bit of a GM rivalry here that's already come together in my head. And Boston, again, with the first overall pick here. I wasn't expecting this, to be honest, again, in that trial run. What do I say? So they already have 2 centers. As valuable an asset as Fred Stanfield is, they already have 2 centers. They could go after a defensive defenseman. However, they already do have, what they probably already would conclude at this point is the best defenseman, certainly the best young defenseman in the game. So what do you do if you're Boston? Wow. And it's funny too, because with the one this afternoon, right away with the very first choice, a dilemma came up with it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to avoid that, to be quite honest. So, and let me see if I can just keep that. Oh dear. Oh, I look at that. I meant to remove Boston. Ouch. Oh, goodness. Okay, I can actually fix that, though. Be right back. So already a bit of a snafu here. I meant to, I found out that if I touch the screen, it automatically interprets it as a close and not a remove. I'm supposed to hit remove so that the wedge goes down to 5 teams, or the wedges go down to 5 and then 4, and so on. The wheel goes down to 5 teams, I mean. So allow me again, because I really, it's funny, I should have prepared for everything. I wasn't really expecting this to come up. Okay. I have Boston. See, but again, it's hard to say what Boston would do here. It really, really is. It's really hard to say what Boston would do here. But I think I know what they will do. So already I'm going to throw a wrench into things here. So Chicago, they have already provided Boston with a wealth of players. And so going forward into the 70s, Boston is going to look with the first overall pick in this supplementary draft. They are going to acquire one Dennis Hall. So Dennis Hall does not have the best card, but he's young. He's 23. And again, Busick isn't getting any younger. So they're going to slot in Dennis Hall there on the left side. And again, there are several good choices. One of the things too, and I meant to say this off the top, this is very subjective. That's what I really realized when I did that 5-round trial run this afternoon. This is very subjective. It's really difficult to say in reality what these teams would have done. I think Dennis Hall, however, again, I don't know that he would stay in the NHL to the end of the 1970s, and he would continue having solid seasons for Chicago throughout the 70s, even when brother Bobby was in the World Hockey Association. But even not knowing all that, I think that Hall, he had a bit of a down sophomore year in 68. And again, this is hypothetically, even though I'm going to call it the 67-68 for the replay, this hypothetically would have occurred, let's say, I don't know, toward the end of 68, maybe even into May, when the NHL just decided, okay, this was a disaster. They pulled the plug. I mentioned something else in the Delphi thread about a financial scandal. So for what have you, Dennis Hall has been picked. And Toronto, and I've already sort of floated this rumor actually in another video or two. So Toronto coming up second is highly convenient for me, because I just have a weird feeling. I just had a weird feeling that this is who they would go for. And this is what I'm going to call pre-acquire. They're not acquiring him, and they're not reacquiring him. But Toronto, with the second overall pick here in this entry draft, is going to pre-acquire Bernie Parent. There he is. Let me actually adjust the zoom focus. So once again, Toronto is pre-acquiring Bernie Parent. Now I have to reset the wheel. And I shouldn't have to reset it every time. That was just a hiccup early. Again, I have tested this out before trying to do this. I decided not to live stream this one, though, just because I'm not as comfortable live streaming. And should I upload this? I mean, I only get to do this draft once. This is anywhere from a 3 to 53 year commitment, so I want to do it right. And I'm taking my time. Feel free to skip through and everything like that. I still have 3 in the brain, because again, this is going to be a 3 to 53 year commitment. I decided I'm not going to pause. I thought about pausing to put stickers in the players and things like that. Yes, Derek Sanderson already has a sticker. Westfall has his peeled off. It wasn't so easy to do. Those homemade stickers that I got from the local print shop are actually pretty good. They're of pretty good quality. So anyway, so far it's been Dennis Hall, Bernie Parent. Let's go with the third overall pick here for this 68 redraft. And we are looking at, it looks like it's going to be Detroit. Okay, this isn't going to get any easier. So quick preview. With Toronto, basically priority number 1 was Bernie Parent. Actually, I'll say specifically, Toronto has to get younger in goal, which they've done actually with the selection of Parent. Toronto also has to get younger on their blue line, obviously, with the 80-year-old blue line there. Of 80 plus, I think, or 79 or 80 years old there. Horton and Stanley, close enough anyway, either way. And for the Detroit Red Wings, they actually want a veteran goaltender. And then they'd be looking at a younger right wing for Gordie Howe, and younger center. But Roger Crozier actually was doing a bit of reading on him. He was having problems with ulcers as far back as the early 60s. He had some problems with confidence into 68. He actually left the team for a spell. So Detroit really needs, I think, a stable veteran, and a veteran netminder who's not easily shaken. I've thought about a couple of guys for this pick. I'm going with the one who had the better overall season. I'm trying to think actually whether I write or select the card. This one here, I would say, even though he's a couple years older than the other one they could pick, just by way of his having performed better in 68, if this were real, and assuming that this is, they've decided to contract or retract the league towards season's end, so like in May 68, even if I'm still calling it the 67-68 season, without further ado, Detroit, as rumored, to one other person, I'm going to go with Gump Worsley there for the Detroit Red Wings. So, and again, some of the criteria for this, I will say, includes Hockey Bones card, and Worsley, by way of his having backstopped Montreal in 67-68 before a Montreal Canadiens blue line, the benefit of that, and it will benefit Detroit, he has a good card. So, and again, I want this to be competitive and interesting in a variety of ways. So we removed Detroit. We have just 3 teams left on the wheel here, and we're good to go. This is wheelofnames.com, by the way, and looks like, is it going to be, and then another thing I really like about this wheel is, so it's Chicago or Montreal, it's Montreal, but the lines are really thin, and so when it's kind of 50-50 in the middle, it's hard to tell. Now, Montreal, I was going to joke actually about when I did that 5-round practice run this afternoon, that it looked like I was making Montreal too strong. and that certain fans of Boston would not like that, and I think certain fans of Boston will not like this either. So Montreal, their priorities, they have to get younger in the middle and at center with John Beliveau, and they have to, and then they need to acquire a little more experience in the wing, and also a backup goalie, because Vachon's still relatively wet behind the ears at this point. So what Montreal is going to do, however, because they've got a pretty good blue line in front of Vachon, so I think what they want to do here, and again, I have to try to coordinate this, so I got the card and the marker in hand at the same time. He is there front and center. He is the center. He is the center who is front and center since Sanderson was reacquired at the last second. Going to Montreal here, going into 68, is going to be Fred Stanfield. So Fred Stanfield selected 4th overall by the Montreal Canadiens. And already we have 4 players. And I think the 4 players, it makes logical sense. So in addition to saying that this is very subjective, this is also not necessarily going to be BPA all the time, but what fills a roster's void, what satisfies a roster's priority. So you have Fred Stanfield there, 4th overall in the first round, and we're going to see who we get next, either New York or Chicago. Let's see here. That looks like it's going to be the Rangers. Ooh, this could be tough, because this was tough this afternoon. So the Rangers, the first thing they want to do front and center, if this is 1968, I don't yet know, as Emile Francis, how good Vic Hadfield is going to become. I can see his potential, but I'm not quite sure how Hadfield is going to pan out. So there are a few things I could do here. I could simply go back to like a Dean Prentice, although Prentice is at least 35 in this. There are a few different ways that I could go with this. Yeah, Prentice there is 35. Looking to some other left wings that I could go with. Dennis Hall would have been a good choice for the Rangers, actually. So I'll come right out and say, actually, I'm going to give the Rangers the player, and it might seem like I'm drafting him a little high. I'm going to give the Rangers the player, actually, who I gave them first in the first round this afternoon, although they went 2nd overall this afternoon. So I really think, again, they have to do something about that left side, and there are several, for a variety of reasons. There are some different people that I can slot in there. I think the Rangers in the position that they're in, though, because another thing that I did here was I looked to what place they finished in 67 and what place the team finished in 68. And then I added those 2 numbers together, and the lower the number, the better overall it is for the team. So the Rangers are actually 3rd with 6 points. Again, lower points here is better. Montreal 3 points for the 2nd place and 3rd place finish. 2 and 1 adds up to 3. Chicago with first place finish and a 4th place finish. I believe they would add up to 5. New York is at 6. Yeah, because they had a 2nd place finish and a 4th place finish, and Toronto is at 8, Boston is at 9, and Detroit actually is at 11. So Detroit might look to build for the future going forward, though they took Gump Worsley there to start things off. But for the Rangers, again, that pick And sorry if it seems like a bit of an odd one, but I think I will return to this person. A little younger than Prentice. He's 29 years old, and I think they bring with him a winning track record. Again, if this were real, I could see them wanting to acquire somebody with the playoff experience, with the championship experience. On top of that, they're going to go with Montreal left wing Gilles Tremblay as their first overall pick here. Or their first pick, I mean, in the first round. First pick, what is it, 5th overall in the first round here. So Tremblay, and I should actually, because JC could go at some point this evening as well, I should actually add a G to that. So anyway, we remove the Rangers, and it's going to be the Chicago Blackhawks just for fun. Let's give the Blackhawks logo a spin there anyway. Funny enough, had it not been only them there, probably would have gone to another team. So for the Blackhawks, again, I'll pause actually and just look again at their priority list. And then I have a top who is available list here, some various preparations over here in this messy notebook. So for the Blackhawks' number one priority, because again, I want to differentiate these teams a little bit, they want to add a prime goaltender, a goaltender who's sort of in his prime years. They reacquiring Hall might be a little awkward for someone like DeJordy where he is at in his career. And so I think what the Blackhawks will do, they are going to acquire another goaltender who's kind of in his prime as well. This guy is 29, and he has great numbers for the 68 season. And again, yes, that does matter here because this is theoretically late in 68 after expansion wasn't working out, or sometime in 68. So by this point, they're already aware of the season that Bruce Campbell is having. Chicago with the final pick of the first round. And again, this is one, so 2 out of 6 actually, that at least 2 out of 6. I'm not going to say actually the total number, but this is going to be the first round, rounding out the first round. And again, priority choice there for Chicago. Fills a priority. They wanted to get a prime goaltender before they look elsewhere. They already have a team of superstars there in front of them, young and old. So I'm going to pause and reset the wheel because as you can see here, once it's done, this is what happens. I guess I can show that. So I exit full screen and then what do I do? Oh, yes, I go to open and I have it titled, I think, saved as original 6. And then I can just go full screen again. And there we have the wheel reset ready to go here once more. So we'll tap the NHL. I could actually tap it just about anywhere I found. But first up here in the second round. Ooh, okay. So a right wing was not drafted in the first round, and that's unfortunate. So that means that Bobby Rousseau is still available. And that's why, as a Habs fan, let me make sure that I get his name spelled correctly. So as a Habs fan, I am going to, let's see here. Where is he? Because I did that practice run, I had to stuff all the cards back in and they didn't get to all the respective places. I need a little more veteran experience on the wing. Rousseau is 27. I'm going to go with somebody who's even a little more battle-tested than that, actually, here early on. Not that I might not look to acquire Rousseau later on for the Habs again. John McKenzie. So Montreal has acquired John McKenzie with, and it's an MC and not an MAC. I always with names like that, McDonald McKenzie, things like that. So John McKenzie here is going to be Montreal's. I guess I can probably pause while I write this down. Come to think of it, that'd be a good way to save time. But Montreal has acquired their John McKenzie with the first pick of the second round. So let's get rid of that, give it another spin, and just see who we get here. So I guess that glare doesn't really look so good. So with the second pick here, so it's going to be Detroit. Detroit again, now they've got that veteran goaltender locked up. I think they're just going to look to get younger elsewhere. So having a look here, veteran goaltender, young right wing and center, and prospects. So while the Red Wings will look to get younger, and they started out ironically by adding 38-year-old Gump Worsley, maybe this is sort of a step down, a middle step. They're looking to Montreal. They're looking to the snubbing of Bobby Rousseau. They're going to do something about it. Gordie Howe, being the age he is at, they want a good right wing to slot in behind Gordie Howe in their top 6. And so the Detroit Red Wings are in fact going to look to Bobby Rousseau immediately after he was passed over by the Montreal Canadiens. There you have it. Bobby Rousseau with the second pick in the second round. And let's Boston up next, wondering who they can poach from Chicago. Because again, jokingly, I added that Chicago players might be a priority here for Boston and for Milt Schmidt. Let's see here. Boston wants to add a defensive defenseman. That was something that I passed over in the initial round, actually, when I drafted Dennis Hall. So there were a couple of guys I was considering earlier today for Boston's defensive defenseman slot. And then I ended up, well, let's see here. Let me have another quick look here to see. Again, just take one more look here at who is available and who slots in nicely. Yeah, I think they have to go with the pure defense here. So a generation prior, in a previous generation of NHL hockey anyway, the Boston Bruins, they had a fellow by the name of Bobby Bauer. And the hockey guy really likes to rattle off that Bobby Bauer at the Boston Bruins. Well, here's Bob Bond. So Bob Bond here in the second round, he is going to go to the Boston Bruins to really just make an already awesome blue line. I think that much more fantastic. And I think, again, his sort of skill set can line up and match well with. And again, I wasn't around in 68, so if you're a pundit who lived through 68 and saw it and you think that I'm ridiculous and this could never happen, sorry about that, but it is still fun for me. So I like the idea of Bob Bond playing for the Boston Bruins on the blue line. There, the Bobby Bond plays for it. Bobby Bond battles for Boston Bruins blue line. And anyway, so we're halfway done here, just round two, but we're already over 20 minutes in. That's actually been pretty standard for me recently. So is it going to be Chicago? I actually kind of hope, since they had the last overall pick in round one. I don't want to be unfair to anybody. So it is the Blackhawks up next. So peeking at their priorities after the prime goalie, which they already have, they have a defensive-minded forward in mind. So I think this is where, like, to be honest, most of this, I'll confess, most of this follows what I already had in mind this afternoon and with this afternoon's practice run. But I have someone in mind for Chicago, actually. I think this is where they will deviate from what I had going here in the afternoon. Let me just have another quick look here at the cards. Yes, I like this one. So this is someone who benefited greatly from expansion and really was able to establish himself as a superstar at the NHL level, give him more ice time and everything in a more prominent role. I'm going to go with Red Berenson here for the St. Louis Blues. And Red Berenson will be drafted here with the fourth pick of the second round by Tommy Ivan and the Chicago Blackhawks. So there, I'm going to ink him in. It is going to be Red Berenson there in round two. And so removing Chicago, it's going to be one of the blue teams. So New York, Toronto. And if that's Toronto, I already know who they want. Yes. So with the Toronto Maple Leafs, with their second overall selection in this, they've got the younger goaltender. They're not going super young in the blue line, but I do see a good blue liner who I thought, not that he wouldn't be he'd be a really good fit with any team, actually. I don't even know if he should have survived this long in the draft. Bill White. Bill White's a stud in this. So Bill White will go to the Toronto Maple Leafs here with, I guess, what would be the 11th overall pick here of this redraft. Maybe this is a little more goalie heavy early on than some might have anticipated, but again, it's my draft, my rules, my fun, my league, my project that will run anywhere from 3 to 60 or 53 rather seasons at least. Who knows? Let's see here. So again, New York, just as a formality, I'll let the wheel spin while I peek at their priorities again. So after bolstering the left wing, actually, they want to look to a defensive forward similarly. And I think carrying along in that same vein, actually, for the Rangers, what they might do to slot in behind Jean Martel up front here. And again, as I say this, I want to have another look here to confirm. Of course, they have Phil Goyette, who had 65 points as a New York Ranger that season. But I think what they want to do, this guy is still only 30, defensively very sound, no slouch in the scoring department, 20-goal season. What they're going to do with the final pick of the second round is take Ralph Backstrom off Montreal. So Montreal has gone the Boston route, and now they're seeing some of their talent, some of their championship talent, some of that talent that played with them going back even to a previous dynasty there a little bit, taken away from them. So Ralph Backstrom is going to be taken here at the tail end of the second round by the New York Rangers. And as I enter the third round here to the backdrop of a Korean drama in the other room, let's see here. I guess Well, let's see who we have with the first overall pick. That's what we do. The first pick here in the third round. Let's see if we get someone different. This wheel, again, it's been tested for randomness. If it comes up Montreal, I'm going to be a little more skeptical about that. But it does look like we're going to get New York. So even though this isn't a snake, I think that it does make sense. Now, I also have here a veteran stars, the Rangers again, because the 6 overall points. The Rangers are really, and I got this, I got some good advice actually, and you should know who you are from. I got some good advice about how I might go about doing this, and so I've you know made some changes here, some suggestions, some advice that I finally came around to agreeing with. And so a team like New York, I think that they are going to look to acquire veterans with championship experience. And actually, as I look, I think I see a good player. I don't know. There are a couple that I could look to, but again, this one here, he is still only 31 at the time of this draft. And so, well, I'm looking at a couple of others that are pretty similar. That's a good one too, actually. It's hard to say here. The right combination of things that these players have. I'm going to take a real close look here at a couple of players. I might even pause actually just to really. So I think what New York's going to do here, they're going to take someone from the Toronto Maple Leafs, actually, also with championship experience. And again, for the story career that he's had already up to this point, he is still just 31 years old in the year 1968, and that is Bob Paulford. So Bob Palford is so really this is going to be a real, even though they have the gag line, they have Eddie Jacquemin, and they have Jim Nelson, Harry Howell, and so on, Rod Sealing. They it's going to be a new look here for the New York Rangers. So with the second pick here in the third round, are we looking at Boston? We are looking at Boston. Okay. Allow me to have another look here at the priorities for Boston. So they got younger on the left side, and they unfortunately lost John McKenzie to Montreal, but they've already added Bobby Bonds. They've added a defensive defenseman. So a veteran on the right side, a backup goaltender, anyone playing for Chicago. And all right, I really went back and forth on this one between this guy and one other guy. On one hand, I've actually kind of thought that despite what I might have said in a previous video, if two players are really about evenly matched, evenly suited for a position, then I might go with the one that already had experience playing for the team. On the other hand, because I want change, I want a new look league, that I might just go with someone who already is playing experience for that team, and then, or not. Anyway, sorry, I had to pause there while my wife sneezed. But I'm going to go with Ed Westfall. Ed Westfall here is going to be Boston's pick here in the third round. So they have reacquired one of their own, and see how they do with him going forward. I think if you're Boston, you want to make some changes to your lineup, given where they had finished just the year before in 67. But Westfall is a really good card. But I, for the record, I won't reveal who it is, but someone else kind of similar to Westfall that could end up going soon to another team now that Westfall is no longer available. So up next, it looks like it's going to be the Montreal Canadiens. And Montreal, let's see. So we have Montreal, I think. So they have they need to add experience really both to the left and to the right sides to the Montreal Canadiens. And so a few different players here that I could consider for that. So I think what Montreal will do, and this is not necessarily, I'll fully admit this is probably not necessarily the best player available, and you could argue that they should maybe go with one of their own and add Dick Duff, but I think what Montreal is going to do, they're going to explore a little further. Somebody who has played defense, I could see him playing in Montreal's system rather well. I'm going to go with Doug Mullins here. We're going to give Doug Mullins to the Montreal Canadiens here with their pick in the third round. So far we have Stanfield, McKenzie, two at the time current Bostonians, and then one former Bruins player in Doug Mullins there for Montreal. Because we all know how the Bruins do on my tabletop here on this desktop. So anyway. So it looks like it's going to be the Maple Leafs up next. Okay. Had some thoughts actually on my way to Doug Mullins about what I might do with this pick, but allow me again to glance at Toronto's priorities. I have here young goalie, young defense, and then veterans on the wing. So I think Toronto actually what they will probably do is I mean, they could circle back to Bathgate, or they could circle back to someone, if memory serves me correctly, would have figured into that trade, that deal. Although, as I look now, yeah, there is a couple of guys really that I could strongly consider for this position. Actually, I'm going to pause and have a closer look at two guys in particular. Yes, and some quick contemplation that settles it for me, because actually, with one of the things that I noticed again with that 5 round, which I fully admit to, the 5 round practice run that I did this afternoon, was that sometimes when I was debating between two players for a team, again because this is only a 6 team draft, sometimes it doesn't really benefit one to really sort of mull over two guys, because there's a decent chance you can get that other guy in the next round anyway. So maybe Toronto's going to hope for that. In the meantime, they will reacquire Bob Nevin. So it is the New York Rangers acquiring Paulford for the left side. This Paulford is dual positional, but Bob Nevin will be going the other way back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Bob Nevin here with, I guess that'd be the 4th pick in. What am I trying to say here? The 4th pick in the what is this? The 3rd round, right? And that would be Chicago. Chicago wants to get better defensively and might similarly look to acquire some of Boston's youth. So the Hawks are going to circle back to a former player, actually, as well. Someone they had as recently as 67, actually, and someone who can, if Cam Warren doesn't slot in with Bobby Hull, maybe somebody who can feed Bobby Hull a lot, and that would be Lou Angotti. So Angotti to the Blackhawks. Leaving just Detroit here. So Detroit with the final pick of the 2nd round. Again, Detroit is looking for. They want to get younger at center as well, not just on the wing. So while Phil Goyette is tempting and maybe being criminally overlooked due to his age and just the fact that teams have other positional rather needs at the moment, I'm going to go here actually with a former Detroit Red Wing. Again, trying to think as well, just a whole combination of things all at once, and what if this are real. Detroit also in this trend here, circling back to former guys. Might go with Eddie the Jet Joyal. I knew I was never going to do this perfectly. I mean, full disclosure up front, I'm looking now at Paulford and Evan, and I'm wondering like if New York was in this position. Again, yes, Paulford has kind of maybe a bit more of a championship pedigree, although Nevin played with those 60s at Toronto teams as well. So we'll see what happens here. I guess, I'm ultimately the overseer, the official of this thing, and maybe I oversee a trade between these teams, but I don't know. Through 3 rounds, honestly, I feel better about this so far than I did in the practice run that I did. So I think I'm going to keep going here. I wasn't sure. I thought I'd do either 3 rounds or 5 rounds. I think I will opt for the latter here. So let's exit full screen. Let's open and let's load this again. Load up the wheel. Let's go back to full screen. And let's see who we get here to start off the 4th round. Oh my goodness. I swear I had nothing to do with this. This wheel isn't rigged. I do feel like Montreal has really benefited here. So I already know who the Montreal Canadiens want. They have 3 defensemen already. They basically have a second line now to go with their first. So Montreal is going to look to add a backup goaltender here with a little more experience. I guess I will reach for his card. But again, this is mentally going back to somebody, not only from this afternoon, but someone whom, if I'm being honest, I had sort of eyeballed for Montreal. Again, not anyone. I mean, they could revisit Charlie Hodge, but again, I think, might maybe look for a new infusion, I guess, on the team. So Montreal, to complement Rogi Vachon in goal, is going to go with Cesar Maniago with the first pick in the 4th round. Okay, removing Montreal and respinning. And looks like Detroit. Okay, Detroit. They just got Joyal, they got Rousseau. Have to mull over a couple of prospects here for a moment. And this is actually going to be another case of if Montreal doesn't want him, and he is 31 years old, so he's not super young. This maybe runs contrary to what Sid Abel might have wanted actually for his team. But I think that similarly to Bob Bond with Boston, and this isn't the sole reason why I did it, but I think maybe as well to round out their power play, and just, I guess, without further ado, Dick Duff. So Detroit here in the 4th round, they are going to go with 25 goal scorer, Dick Duff. So Dick Duff for Detroit. Again, has a nice ring to it, and I was going back and forth between a few other left wings that I could have gone with. Guys who would have been a little younger, but statistically no better. So let's give Detroit Duff. And yeah, I guess we've only taken 2 picks so far here in the 4th round. So with the next pick in the 4th round, looks like Boston is back up. So Boston was looking at Doug Favell, and even though there were questions about his health, Boston is going to add Doug Favell to the ranks to play in goal with Jerry Cheevers, give them a good solid 1-2 tandem there with their pick in the 4th round. All right, readying up the next pick. The wheel is down to 3 wedges, and I'm not actually keeping track here too closely either of what order they come up in. Maybe I'll have to take a look afterward and figure out if this wheel was unfair to anyone in the first handful of rounds. Hopefully not. New York. Okay. New York at this point might circle back to someone who's been overlooked. Ralph Backstrom is a great number 3 center in behind some other guys. You know what? They already lost one. Maybe they're a bit emotional. They've already lost one good guy in Bob Nevin, one of their own good ones there in Bob Nevin. I'll admit I was never going to do it perfectly. That was probably, if I'm being quite honest, just a bit of an oversight there. Paulford Nevin, not that Paulford's any pick to scoff at in any way or anything like that, but actually Paulford to watch him on, go and watch some Bob Paulford on YouTube. Really good two-way hockey player. But Phil Goyette, I think New York at this point, they're going to go, okay, Phil Goyette is still available. So again, they've already got 3 pretty good defensemen for various different reasons. So why not add Phil Goyette? Well, he's still available. He couldn't have remained undrafted for too much longer. So there you have it here with the 4th pick in round 4. Phil Goyette has been selected by New York. So now it's either Toronto or Chicago. I think it was round 1, Chicago went last. And this time they're going second last. It'll be Toronto in last. I think that's a first. Could be wrong about that. But yeah, Chicago is, let's see. So I had this idea for the Hawks, and I'm not sure if what am I trying to see here? I'm not sure if Tommy Ivan would have agreed with me. But what I'm really thinking of doing here is just looking here, just having another look here at the players. And yeah, I can see this guy maybe is a bit more of a Chicago Blackhawks, so not having too much of the same guy as well. So I'm going to give Dave Ballone to Chicago here in the 4th round. So Dave Ballone there becomes Chicago Blackhawk. And that means that with the last pick of the 4th round, we are looking at, just for fun, just for spite or whatever, let's let Toronto wheel around there. So young defense, veteran right wings, or veteran wings rather, not just on the right side. So I have Henderson. To be honest, actually this afternoon, Ballone came up for Toronto, but 1 too late there for Toronto with this go round. Ballone went 1 too early, I guess, for Toronto. So looking again, I have various pages here, who's available, who they might want to circle back on. Toronto might actually go with another younger blue liner, actually, come to think of it. So why not? Actually, I'm a little surprised that this guy has lasted this long as well. Toronto is going to, they had already protected 4 forwards, so they are already up to 5. And I think they're going to try to start rounding out their blue line with some guys that'll be a little more longer lasting. And so, and again, there's a couple of really good viable candidates here, but I think Toronto's going to go with Barclay Plager. Plager as well, who, to be honest, I can't remember, though I still have the video of it. He went to someone else this afternoon. Again, that was just practice. So, other than I think for and there was always going to be at least one that would bother me, other than for maybe the Paulford Nevin thing, to be honest, I'm kind of, what I have loosely in mind as strategy for these GMs has sort of come to fruition here in this draft so far. So we're into round 5 now. Let's see. We're into round 5 here as I'm losing my voice. It's getting later in the day here, and it looks like Boston is first up in round 5. Okay. Boston's done pretty well so far. Do they look to go back to Chicago for their next pick? Let's see. So still some really good players available because, again, not only is this subjective, it is balanced. So Boston, again, there's a number of guys who still could have been a really good pick for the Boston Bruins. I'm going to go with Ted Hampson there for the Bruins to, I guess, yeah, right, that's to start round 5. So Ted Hampson will become a Boston Bruin. Next up. Okay, looking at Detroit. I like it when I see Detroit coming up early in rounds simply because they were in last place in the standings. So they're looking for prospects, and more prospects. They're sort of meandering their way down, getting gradually younger, trying to find their way to some prospects. I mean, Joel was still just 27 at the time, but Duff was 31. So again, what I said earlier actually about sometimes, going over a few different guys, but then with this being only 6 teams, some of the same guys being available in ensuing rounds. The Detroit Red Wings here, let me see. I'm looking at several names and trying to think which one I can picture to be honest with you, which one I can, at this point, which one I can picture in a Red Wings uniform, maybe a little more. Let me have a closer look at their cards. So for this one, Detroit has this guy who's only 24 and played well for Minnesota. I hope I pronounce his name correctly when I say Andre Boudreau. Andre Boudreau, he's going to be Detroit's pick here in round 5. All right, lots of talented players still available here. Because the team's protected, again, I'm using condensed scale blue lines for this project, so the team's already kind of selected or had protected, a good better portion of their blue line than they did up front. So that's why, in case anybody noticed, it seems like I'm drafting a lot more forwards than defensemen. That's why. With that said, Chicago's up. So let's see here. Chicago. Again, that defense, they went offense, they went defense. They already have 3 blue liners. They have 2 netminders. So here in round 5, as I go back and have a look here at Chicago's priorities. So I looked at a couple of power play specialists for Chicago. And this one, I think, just by way of his age, again, if this were real, I think he gets it. I know that I don't want to know this, but even though his career never really materialized much for him in the NHL, I think as far as being Mr. Right now and being strong in the power play with a 68 card, I'm going to go here with 30 goal, the donut defender, Mike Walton. All right, who's up next? Now, Walton just went, and so I got a funny feeling New York, actually, they were maybe keeping a close eye on what Tommy Ivan was going to do with this pick. There was Emile Francis. And so I've got Paulford, I've got Goyette, I've got Backstrom. I've already got 3 really good blue lines. I've got Gilles Tremblay. So power play, you say career year for him. I think in this year's power play goals, I think right up there with Bobby Hull, actually. Was Wayne Connolly. So New York will pick Wayne Connolly in the 5th round. And I will fully allow, if this were real, would some guys have gone a lot higher? Would other guys have gone a lot lower? It's really, again, considerations are myriad when you're thinking about doing something like this. So you have Montreal and Toronto, the first 2 of the original 6. And that looks like it's going to just barely stay Montreal. But yes, so Toronto, actually, I think that's the 2nd round in a row now that they've had the last pick. Montreal, haven't thought too much about my own team in a little while here, if I'm being quite honest. So circling back to the priorities, they now have that backup goaltender. They have some more experience here acquired on the wings with McKenzie and Moans. And they have that young center, Fred Stanfield. So far, so good for Montreal. I did, however, scribble out a bunch of other names here that they could look to acquire. I think it's too early to circle back on certain veterans there for Montreal. So this is kind of tough, actually. Do they look to acquire another prospect? So I think what Montreal will do here is they will experiment with trying to generate some more offense from the back end, and they are going to go with, so a lot of expansion players I think are being gobbled up here all of a sudden. They are going to go with, let me double check to see if there's a name between the M and the C. There's not. So Mike McMahon Jr. there, defenseman. Sorry if I'm actually showing those on camera a little too quickly. That is Mike McMahon Jr. there for the Montreal Canadiens. All right, and that just leaves Toronto. Let's see who can Toronto. They're still looking, well, actually, they'd be still looking to acquire veteran right wingers. Again, you have Henderson, you have Ellis. So I didn't see this coming. This guy is older, but Toronto did just win the cup the year before with a bunch of them, bunch of older guys, that is. So with the final pick here, again, this time in the fifth round, Andy Bathgate is going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf once again. And I realize this video is already really long, but I'm just going to keep going. Two more rounds anyway, and then I'll stop, I think. So going into round 6, of course, I'm being honest, I feel a little less prepared. I feel like I was quite prepared for the early rounds, and who knows, this could go off the rails a little bit from here on in, but let's see what happens here. If it's really that terrible, I just won't upload it, and I'll do a take 3 and try not to sound so predictable, try to act surprised when certain teams end up acquiring certain players. So the New York Rangers here getting the first overall pick here in round 6. And so it has occurred to me now that they have added 5 forwards. So that's a lot of forwards that they have added. Again, they're just really trying to be solid and experienced up front. Really looking to take that next step is New York. But I'm thinking about going a couple of different ways here with the Rangers, and that'd be interesting. Again, I think the card will win out. So both these guys have experience. One, you could argue championship experience, but the other one, I want to give every team here a good chance to win, or at least part of me does. So the other one will argue card. And so he's had a stint with several other original 6 teams, as I recall, to the best of my recollection, but mainly Chicago. I'm talking about Glenn Hall, of course. So I think Glenn Hall here in round 6, not that he necessarily would have been very hotly sought after at this point by other teams. So maybe what Emile Francis is doing here is a little strange, but if this were real, he feels like he has the championship pedigree. And maybe, I don't know, should Jackman be injured or something like that in the crease? Jackman, who played pretty much the entire season there for the Rangers in 68, but we'll go with an experienced backup there in Glenn Hall. So Hall kicks us off there for round 6. And Chicago. And again, I'm not claiming to come at this from the point of view of any hockey pundit. This, I guess, to quote the hockey guy, and I think it is the first video that I ever saw of his where he was ranking fantasy forwards, and he reminded everyone, I think at the beginning and at the end, that this isn't scientific. This is fun. Right? This is meant to be fun. So Chicago. Okay, I have an idea for Chicago. Sick of being poached and fleeced by Boston, Chicago is going to come back with Tommy Williams from the Boston Bruins. And I think it's funny in 68, even in 68 when the league wasn't as deep as it was in ensuing seasons, you see really the parity in the talent pool. There are guys, again, who were drafted later that could have been drafted earlier and vice versa. But let's see here. So next up here on the wheel, I'm looking to either Detroit or Montreal. I'm looking barely to Montreal, actually. I think I gave away my bias there. I was hoping, again, for the sake of this, to Detroit, but oh well, I guess Montreal's next up. So similar to New York with Hall, I think that the Canadiens will look to add a veteran to their midst at this point. Again, this is just all in good fun, but I'm thinking perhaps in hopes of acquiring another certain veteran down the line. That might be on another day in a much later round of the draft. They're going to go with Dean Prentice here in round 6. Prentice, who really, other than for his age, is a very viable candidate to have taken in practically any round up to this point. But Prentice is like 35 or 36 in 1968. I could double check here, but he is not young. So Dean Prentice with the, Prentice with, he's 35. So Prentice there in round 6 for Montreal. And now we get Detroit. Detroit, who actually Prentice just exited Detroit. So some poaching back and forth here. Montreal has Russo and Duff. Detroit has Russo and Duff. That's what I meant to say if I didn't. And then Montreal has Dean Prentice. So Detroit is finally going after prospects proper, as they probably should have been all along, but about half dozen rounds in here. They are going to what they have done is they have peered across, I guess, the pond, the hockey belt there in the northern rim of the United States of America, and from then the Minnesota North Stars, like Boudreau, they're going to acquire Jean-Paul Parise. And Parise was a little unproven at this point, but still a decent card, and that is Zach Parise's father. Okay, it's going to be Boston. So once again, Toronto. My goodness, that is at least 3 rounds in 6 that Toronto has been last overall, or last in the round for that. So also looking to the expansion, they've acquired Ted Hampson. Boston's actually going to go with Ray Cullen. 28 goals and 53 points that season, 203 shots, 11 power play goals. Really, again, this guy, I guess some people who may see or hear this, if they get to this point of it, they might be wondering who. But Ray Cullen was pretty outstanding that season. So even though Boston already has Phil Esposito and Derek Sanderson, they're going to pick up Ray Cullen here in round 6. And poor Toronto, that means they're up next. So Toronto here, let's see. So we got Bathgate, we have Nevin, we have... I have a rough idea, actually, of who Toronto will want next. Let's see here. Let me pause and think about this for a bit. So there is a certain entertainer that the Maple Leafs might have given consideration to, but I think, because again, I want to experiment with this a little bit, obviously. Those guys could still be available for the respective teams in later rounds, but I think given the chance to take this guy, this kind of blue chip here, he scored 26 goals playing for Los Angeles at age 24. We're going to go with the Cowboy, Bill Flat, for Toronto. So instead of the entertainer, they get the Cowboy in round 6. And considering that I thought about stopping this either after rounds 3 or 5, I'm actually quite surprised with sort of this third wind that I'm getting here for this headed into round 7, where I admit it's a bit more of a free-for-all because I really don't have as much prepared into the later rounds. I was thinking more specifically with the earlier rounds and trying to address certain needs immediately, but here we go for round 7. Here's hoping, I'm going to be quite honest, that it's either Toronto or Detroit. Looks like it will be Boston again. So I think here in round 7, Boston will go for another Bill, looking to Bill Flett that was drafted by Toronto there at the end of round 6. Boston's going to look at another Bill. This Bill can play, on the power play, because he has a dozen power play goals, and he had 21 of them in 1968. And again, even if I'm skirting timelines in order to know all of that, we're going to go with Bill Hickey here for Boston. Okay, so time for Boston to go. And for the record, I was considering a defenseman for Boston because they do just have the 3. But keep in mind what I'm going to do for the games, somewhat similar more to the era of the original 6. Happy to see that Toronto has come up there, though Chicago would have been nice as well. But I'm just going to dress similar to what I did for the fictional 6 for the 2005 season, just dressing the 4 defensemen anyway, and then a 5th will slot in for like special teams and injury relief primarily. So, I mean, really with 2 or 3 defensemen already protected up front, these teams were pretty good on defense, but there are certain defensemen, with that said, that they could look to add to bolster their lineup. One that I would have in mind, except that it is Toronto who is up, in Toronto is they've already drafted a pair of defensemen actually. And let's see, what would Toronto look to add at this point? Now they have a couple of centers. So this way, in a sense as well, I think is where it gets maybe a little more difficult, because looking at everything that Toronto has, again, a couple of defensemen have been added. They've reacquired Bob Nevin. All these teams are really, something that also has come to my attention actually as I do this, is that all these teams are going to be really stacked again, even from 68. They will be a lot stronger than they were in the actual historic season. I think, I'm quite sure of that actually. So Bill Flett, Andy Bathgate, Barclay Plager, Bob Nevin, Bill White, and Bernie Perrant so far have been Toronto's picks. Yes, other than Bathgate, their names all begin with the letter B as well. So does that mean Bruce McGregor? Does that mean Britt Selby? Does that mean some of these other guys here who I'm having a look at? I know which side actually that I would like to add to Toronto on. Wouldn't that be something if they reacquired a Wendell Clark before his time? That might be... Let me have a closer look actually at someone. So to be honest, Toronto almost brought someone else in, but then I remembered actually that the previous round I was considering Cowboy Bill Flett and this guy, and so here in the 7th round it's going to be Eddie the Entertainer. headed back to the Toronto Maple Leafs with that pick in round 7. So sometimes they might not even reacquire current roster players. It could, in fact, be a past roster player, or in Perron's case, someone who would spend time with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the future. And next up, had somebody really ready to be taken by Toronto. And in fact, this might be a good, if it's Detroit, is it going to be Montreal again? Am I going to get that lucky? Wow, this wheel knows that I'm a Habs fan. It really does. Not going to deny it whatsoever, one iota. No way. I don't know, though this is a player who spent a little time with Montreal. I don't know that that's who they go for here, actually. So I think Montreal is never too far away from their next, I don't know, quality defensive player. And so they're going to in this with this move, they're going to somebody that they had prior that they're going to reacquire a little sooner historically than they did reacquire someone else who I hinted at. So here in round 7, it's going to be Jimmy Roberts going back to the Montreal Canadiens, sort of the younger edition of Claude Provost, who actually Provost had an outstanding season that year. But anyway, Jimmy Roberts. Down to 3 here in round 7. And Chicago. Okay, Chicago. Let's see. Yep. So I think for Chicago, I'm going to head back to the blue line. I know someone like Pierre Pilote being on his way out, given the age that he is. And just in case Marat doesn't pan out, despite them giving away the house for him, I'm going to add Dale Rolfe to the Chicago Blackhawks. So away goes Chicago. We have just Detroit and New York. And again, I really like how until the last second there, you can't really tell in this wheel who's going to come up. I think it's, I was going to say I think it's New York, but I would be wrong. I'm wrong. It is Detroit. So I think that Detroit, they will step back to the blue line. To be honest, this is someone I didn't really consider until seconds ago, someone kind of under the radar, but his card looks pretty good. I can't pretend to know a whole lot about him. We're going back to Minnesota, back to the expansion team, and to Bob Wojtowicz. Wojtowicz for Detroit, or Wojtowicz to Detroit. And that just leaves the New York Rangers. I don't even know why now I know I'm getting a little tired because I'm sitting here doing nothing and watching a Rangers wedge there spin around on a wheel. So New York, again, they've gotten pretty hefty up front, I think, poaching other championship teams with championship experience, and then in between there adding Wayne Connolly, getting the veteran Glenn Hall there in goal. So you have Nilsson, you have Howell, you have Sealing. Who do you go back to if you're the Rangers and you want another defenseman? Do you try to get tougher? Do you add a veteran? I'll be honest, at this point, your guess is as good as mine. I'm looking to certain guys too. I mean, like Arnie Brown's looking pretty good, but is that who they reacquire here in the initial 7, or do they try to maybe take a flyer on somebody with a little more upside? Again, it's hard to say, right? These things are quite hard to say. And again, looking at other players defensively, their assets, their attributes, yes, I'm considering the cards, and so be it if that it's a little out of line in history, a little dishonest or disingenuous in whatever way, disingenuous in doing this. But so Tremblay, Backstrom, Paulford, Goyette, Connolly, Hall, hard to say. So a lot of really good guys could slot in here, but I think with the final pick here, I guess in round 7, the Rangers are going to slot up or suit up with another offensively capable veteran, decent on the power play as well. Scored 24 goals in just 63 games that season. That'd be Floyd Smith. So there it is. I mean, you can see there, but just to recap, actually, in case you're listening only. So Boston to their 7, they made a splash early. They got Dennis Hall, Bob Bonnet, Ed Westfall. They got him back. Doug Favell to back up Jerry Cheevers, Ted Hampson, Ray Cullen, and Bill Hickey. For Chicago, it was Bruce Gamble, Red Berenson, Lou Angotti, Dave Ballone, Mike Walton, Tommy Williams, and Dale Rolfe. And it's nearing midnight here. For Detroit, Roger Crozier, Gary Bergman, Howie Young, Bart Crashley. Sorry, that's their initial 7. They acquired Gump Worsley, Bobby Rousseau, Eddie Joyal, Dick Duff, Andre Boudreau, J.P. Parise, Bob Wojtowicz. For Montreal, it's Fred Stanfield and John McKenzie, the Bostonians, and the former one there with Doug Moens, and then Cesar Maniago. I'm not sure if he spent any time with Boston. Mike McMahon Jr., Dean Prentice, and Jimmy Roberts for New York. Gilles Tremblay, former Montrealer. Ralph Backstrom, also former Montrealer. Bob Paulford, championship pedigree. Phil Goyette, Wayne Connolly, Glenn Hall, and Floyd Smith. So getting a little veteran heavy there at tail's end as well. Toronto, sort of the heir apparent to Johnny Bower. They're leaving that to Bernie Parent, those skates to fill. Bill White as well to get younger in the blue line, and then Bob Nevin they reacquired, Barclay Flagger as well for the aforementioned getting younger in the blue line. But then they went to a veteran because they do have a couple of young wings in Henderson and Ellis already. They went back to Bathgate and they got Cowboy Bill Flett and Eddie Shack, I guess, to sell more tickets there in between. So anyway, there it is. This is now just over an hour. So what else can I say other than that this, if I end up uploading this, then this will mean that officially this has been the inception of this project.